to talk to you today about Mother of Divine Grace School, what it is, what we do, what makes us unique. I want to talk a little bit about homeschooling in general as well. And I would like to entertain questions. Kind of a funny way to put it. But anyway, I would be happy to take some questions and answer them to the best of my ability. So I want to start with Mother of Divine Grace School. But before I talk about the school itself, I need to place it in a context. This context is the overview of our mission and reason for being. So this is our mission statement we have recently formalized. We exist to help Catholic families raise their children in a living Catholic culture in their homes, mentoring them in using the Mother of Divine Grace Catholic Classical Curriculum to lead their children to good judgment concerning the good, the true, and the beautiful. That's our mission. I think this is really important in these days because the formation that the world offers us is really not compatible with the call of the Catholic parent. Certainly not as enunciated in Casti Connubii, an encyclical I just love and think everybody should read. Every summer, well, for many years, I taught a health class for parents that used that encyclical. And it was so striking to me. So it's about Christian marriage, right? It was so striking to me that the Holy Father says, both husband and wife, however, receiving these children with joy and gratitude from the hand of God will regard them as a talent committed to their charge by God, not to be employed for their own advantage or for that of an earthly commonwealth, but to be restored to God with interest on the day of reckoning. Isn't that great? Like the gospel, right? Like the master goes away and he gives these talents to his servants, right? And then he comes back and he asks for a reckoning. For us who have children, those children are our talents. They're what the gifts God has given us, and they're to be returned to him. Right. The text goes on and says, God wishes men to be born not only that they should live and fill the earth, but much more that they should be worshipers of God, that they may know him and love him and finally enjoy him forever in heaven. Christian parents must understand that they are to educate children who are to become members of the Church of Christ, to raise up fellow citizens of the saints and members of God's household. That's our calling. That's what we're supposed to be doing. As I said, this works against the world, and indeed against, in a certain way, the human condition. In the book, Parochial and Plain Sermons, which I love, St. John Henry Cardinal Newman discusses the fact that for many of us, religion is a weariness. That's the title of the sermon. Religion is a weariness. He says that we must turn from the world and love of the world, turn from the world and love of the world to make ourselves new hearts. He says, if our hearts are by nature set on the world for its own sake, and the world is one day to pass away, as indeed it is, what are they to be set on? What to delight in then? If we would be happy in the world to come, we must make us new hearts and begin to love the things that we naturally do not love. Now, as a Catholic, I know all good things come from God, and that to enjoy his world in the right way is itself a way to him. I understand that. It's not our nature to love the wrong things and turn away from God. But we do have a fallen nature darkened by sin that makes it easy for us to love the things of the world inordinately. With that caveat, though, I am just so struck, like it really resonated with me when I read that This is an exhortation that we are to prepare ourselves for eternity by conforming ourselves to it now, and to learn to love those things in such a way that after death, we'll just be ready to take up that new life. Here's the thing. I think that is what we are doing when we educate our children in the Catholic intellectual tradition. We are preparing our children to live in the world, but not of it, so that they will be ready to take up their new life in God when that time comes, which it will. And that's how we are giving our talents received from God back to Him. This is incredibly important in this day when the call of the world is so opposed to what we are trying to accomplish. Now, I know that we, Mother of Divine Grace, not the only Catholic school or even the only Catholic distance program that has as its mission the formation of Catholic families with Catholic hearts centered on eternal truths. There aren't many, but there are certainly some besides Mother of Divine Grace. Now, we're not only Catholic, but classical, which is a bit more narrowing, as it were. We believe in classical education as a truly natural human formation. And the reason we do is because classical education is the education of the person as a person, not as a worker. It is the education every educated person in Western civilization once received, sometimes known as liberal arts education. Its content and end are more than the liberal arts, however. It is the education of a free man, and it employs all his powers. In such an education, the idea is to educate the man as a man. Whatever vocation he might pursue, all of his faculties are used. He develops all the powers of his soul. He becomes a person able to direct himself to the good and also able to direct the community of which he is a part to the good. We could use more men like that today. Such a man is the opposite of a slave who acts as a tool, not understanding the ends for which he labors. The free man knows exactly what he is working for, and he freely intends it. He acts fully as a man, specifically using those faculties that distinguish him from the lower animals. This classical education, the education of a free man, involves a rigorous course of studies, a course of studies specifically ordered from the earliest grades to the highest truths. It is the aim of classical education to develop in the student habits of mind that will help them throughout their lives. These intellectual habits teach them how to think, how to approach any subject they desire when they desire to learn it so that they can truly understand it. They learn that to fully know something means that it be understood in its causes. So this education is ordered to causes. If there was ever a time when men needed to know how to think, this is it. When we see what is going on in this world, when we see the fear of death, the riots, the looting, the murder perpetrated by the groupthink false narratives supplied by the media, we know that we have to equip our children with the ability to think for themselves in a way that's based on reality and with the judgment to discern true sources and data from false sources and data. And the only way I can see to do that right now is to do it ourselves. The classical approach to education is an approach specifically and intentionally ordered to giving men the tools of critical thinking and the content of an objective reality. When we live in a time when there's no understanding of nature, that things have a nature, that they are what they are according to objective reality, you don't even know, the world doesn't know what a man is and what a woman is and what marriage is and what marriage is ordered to. And we've got a problem that we have to deal with, and we're born into this time. So God is calling us to do something about it. And the first thing you do, like Mother Teresa said, to take care of the person in front of you. And for us, That's our children. We've got to teach them the truth, that there's an objective reality, that things have a nature and you have to respect that nature. And that's what classical education does. In a classical education, you learn about the arts and the sciences. The arts are the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, and logic, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. Those arts prepare the mind for philosophy, the sciences, science in the sense of the things you can actually know about because they're necessary and unchanging. Included in that, we place the study of nature, as Aristotle studies it in the physics, the study of the soul, the de anima, the study of moral and political life, the ethics and the politics. But all of these disciplines are ordered in a classical program to the study of theology. In Aristotle's time, that meant metaphysics. You know, metaphysics means beyond physics, beyond nature. But for St. Thomas, as he describes education in question 5 of his commentary on Boethius's De Trinitate, all of that, including metaphysics, is ordered to sacred theology. This is the crown of knowledge. It is that to which all intellectual life is by nature ordered. And it's very, very significant that this end of the intellectual life, the knowledge of God, right? Revelation, sacred theology, is also the end of human life. God is our end. That to which we are ordered intellectually, morally, and spiritually. Classical education has the same end identically as the end of all men, the knowledge of the very highest object of truth, God himself. Acquiring the arts, the sciences, metaphysics, and sacred theology is preparing our children for eternity. Please note that all of this is predicated on that idea of objective truth, a truth that we do not create, but we live in accord with. So you can see that one way to make new hearts in our students, as St. John Henry Cardinal Newman said, is to classically educate them. In this education, one is ordered in all that he does to that true end, the end of God himself, the end to which we will, God willing, come to in eternity. Classical education, by its nature, turns one's mind from the ephemeral, the here and the now, to eternal truths and to the eternal cause. And I think that in the coming age, our children are going to need to be really, really clear about man's final end. They're going to need to understand what they are made for so that they will be faithful to it and to him in the midst of persecution. If nothing else, they will face the persecution of the courts and the media and the culture. That we already know. The fact is, those who are wrong always hate those who stand against them and therefore persecute them. The history of Christianity bears that out. Now, there's a bit more to think about in terms of our education. In our classical grade schools and high schools, we do not usually read a lot of Aristotle together, or even St. Thomas. Some, not a lot, right? To do so would not be appropriate, as those materials require preparation to be fruitful. But we do learn something of all the liberal arts and the sciences and sacred theology. We do the preparatory work that will bring the students' minds to the fullness of classical education at the right time. All learning is cyclical. We learn first on an introductory level, and then we come back to the same objects at a deeper level. That's really easy to see in mathematics, where you start by counting numbers and you learn the 4 operations, and then you spend the rest of your mathematical career deepening that understanding of those 4 operations, right? You add, subtract, multiply, and divide with whole numbers. You do the same with fractions, decimals, percents, algebraic expressions, trigonometric functions, and calculus. So clearly what you're doing is deepening your understanding of what is first grasped on a very foundational level. That's easy to see in mathematics, but it's true in every field, including the liberal arts and the sciences and the knowledge of God to which they are ordered. So our curriculum is ordered intentionally to directly forming the human person as a person ordered to God and giving them a foundation in all of the arts and sciences. So first, our students learn the basis of all arithmetic. They acquire an acquaintance with geometric figures. They are exposed to great music, and then they study God's effects in nature, including the heavens. Those are the beginning of the arts of the quadrivium, sorry. We want to make sure that those are included in the curriculum. And they learn the basis of all language arts, reading and writing, which is the beginning of the trivium, because all of the arts of the trivium have to do with speech. Our students work on argumentation so that they're able to use rhetoric in the service of the truly noble. They summarize so as to order items according to importance instead of chronology. They identify arguments and they construct their own arguments. They develop their thoughts in paragraphs, essays, and papers using the rhetorical modes: exposition, argumentation, description, and narration. As older students in our program, they develop their understanding of the ends of rhetoric. Rhetoric is of three kinds: the political, the forensic, and the ceremonial. In our high school program, we want our students to discuss and write about all three types of actions and characters. They explore the high and noble. They discuss what is good and bad, blameworthy and praiseworthy, what is just and unjust. And in doing so, they are pursuing the ends of rhetoric. And they prepare for philosophy. They read great literature. These great works appeal to the imagination and move the affections in accord with reason, right reason. They present or imply profoundly important views of human life and reality as a whole. Similarly, the great works of history that they read provides vicarious moral experience, a conception of human society, and an awareness of the greatest issues mankind has faced, that we are going to face too. It's really important to read about the Persian Wars, you know? They were willing to die rather than be slaves. We need to make sure that our children understand the importance of that. The investigation of the arguments of the American founding fathers regarding the nature of the Republic and the particular incarnation of the form of mixed government that was appropriate to us in this new land that was being founded is really a beginning of the study of the politics. I have said this over and over again. Every student who graduates from my program should be able to, I want them to be able to articulate what a law is, an ordinance of reason for the common good promulgated by him who is care of the community. St. Thomas's definition in the Secunda Secundae, the Treatise on Law, question 90. That is really important for our children to know because they're going to be faced with laws that are not laws. And they need to know how the virtuous man deals with that situation. We study natural science, particularly animal behavior, as a beginning to the study of the soul. In a classical program, the proper order and investigation should be followed: object, activity, power, soul. We do that. As regards the highest object of the classical curriculum, God himself, who is the end of natural and supernatural theology, we study that at every level of our program, but especially work to come to a fuller understanding of theology in the high school years. All of these studies are foundational. They're preparing the student for classical education done in its fullness, as it will be done in college or university. Now, it may be that our students don't go on to do that study. That's entirely possible. Maybe they decide to go into carpentry. That's okay. But our goal is that they be prepared to do so if they desire, and that they have this foundational formation in the Catholic intellectual tradition. The whole of classical education is philosophic in a broad sense because it's a love of wisdom. We want our children to have a love of wisdom. That notion or ordination permeates every part of our curriculum. Our students do truly have the beginning of a classical formation. And as I have been saying, this formation culminates in or is perfected in an understanding of sacred theology. Aristotle, of course, didn't know that sacred theology was even possible, right? But he did know that the first cause was the only thing that would satisfy the intellect. He says that explicitly. He knew that God was the first cause, the cause of all causes, and he knew that he was a thought thinking himself, which is amazing. This scheme for education, starting in the liberal arts, which are ordered to the philosophic sciences, ultimately metaphysics, and which realizes its end in sacred theology, is, as I said, laid out by St. Thomas. I'm not making it up, right? This is St. Thomas's understanding of classical education. So we see again that in the traditional Catholic view of education, all education is ordered in itself to understanding, insofar as we can in this life, God, who is the noblest and most perfect object of our intellect and will. And we see that this is the education we're providing for our students. This is transforming. Now, classical education is not unique to Mother of Divine Grace either, just as we are not uniquely a Catholic school. We have both of these attributes. That is, we are truly Catholic and we are truly classical. And there aren't many distance programs that are both, but there are some. I acknowledge that. What makes us unique, even in the select group, is, in my opinion, the following. In our case, in Mother of Divine Grace, all of this is put together with intentional and specific content and methodological goals. The content and method of the lower grades, kindergarten through fifth, prepares intentionally and specifically the students for the higher grades, 6th through 9th. And those prepare intentionally and specifically for the high school grades, 10th through 12th, both in terms of the methodology and the content. We want our children, our students, to know the foundation of their Catholic faith and to be able to articulate the argument for the motives of credibility. We want them to have a very clear idea of what virtue is, how the virtuous man relates to his environment, specifically to his social environment and to governmental authority. We want them to know what the nature of government is and law, specifically natural law. We want them to put their minds on the related subject of when you have a new thing, when do you have a new thing, not the same thing in a different condition? What makes a one? Very important theological understanding, right? Can't understand the Eucharist without understanding that. Can't understand the hypostatic union without understanding that. These are overarching content goals, and they're achieved by studying the content goals that belong to the specific subjects in the curriculum. So just to take history as an example, I think that a large argument developed over time is important for developing the critical thinking skills that we want to see in our children. So our grade school program reflects the formative stages of the children. In 3rd grade history, we study, so my Irish families and my English families tend to do their history here. What you're studying is a local history, right? And it's personality driven in 3rd grade because 3rd graders respond to persons. And then in 4th and 5th grade, it's an event driven study of local history. We begin the chronological study of history in ancient Egypt in 6th grade, and in 7th grade, the students study ancient Rome and Greece, and then in 8th grade, move on to medieval history, so chronological, right? In 9th grade, they come back, for the American students, to study US history. They're circling back, right? In 10th grade, they return to ancient history, so the 6th and 7th grade, right? At 11th grade, they return to medieval history, like 8th grade, only obviously on a much deeper level. And in 12th grade, they're studying government. As I've been saying, all learning is cyclical. You learn something and you come back to it later at a deeper level. In addition to the deeper consideration of the subject matter, for example, that ancient history in 10th grade, there's always an additional content goal. And the writing assignments are always ordered to developing incrementally the writing skills. In 10th grade history, the children are considering that, in addition to circling back to the ancient history, they're considering the definition of the goodness of man. They make judgments about whether a particular historical figure is good or not. They consider the nature of stable government, and they think about how the virtue of a people affects the common good of the country. All of those topics are appropriate to the rhetorical stage of formation. The grade school courses intentionally and determinately prepare for the high school courses, as I've been saying. The whole high school history program is one long argument about the nature of government in general, which is not to say that there are no other considerations being made, such as what the appropriate life of man is. That's true. But we are focused on what is the government, what is law, what is the basis for those things. In 9th grade, we set the context for that argument about government and learn how to make an argument. In 10th grade, we read Daniel, so the ancient history, right? So that the student may reflect on the way Daniel deals with the government he lives under, which is very reminiscent of our government situation. We read the Iliad so that the children can think about the public and private life of man. And Antigone, so that the issues raised regarding the relative merits of God's law and man's law and the difficulties in ascertaining responsibility can be assessed. We also look at the life of Alexander, who was taught by Aristotle, and whose governmental policies in some measure set the stage for the coming of our Lord in the fullness of time. Then in Polybius's, I just love Polybius, in Polybius's The Rise of the Roman Empire, the student examines the Roman constitution in some detail so that he can see in that particular government some universal truths about the nature of government and what makes a government successful. He's also working on how to use a text and how to format an argument. The last element in the 10th grade history is a consideration of goodness and greatness in men as exhibited in Julius Caesar. The difference between the public and the private, between great achievement and great goodness, needs to be considered. In 11th grade, we are doing two things. We are most importantly expanding the students' understanding of the nature of government and the ingredients of a successful government by looking at two instances, English and especially Spanish government. I hope that the children see explicitly, or at least implicitly, that while the formula for mixed government enunciated in the 6th book of Polybius's The Rise of the Roman Empire contains a universal truth, the Roman government is only one expression of that universal truth. I want them to see another successful government that had a mixed character, but was a monarchy. That form of government is present in medieval Spain, especially in Aragon. The History of Medieval Spain by Joseph O'Callaghan has such a discussion. And it's, not only does it have the discussion, but the discussion of kingship in that book is just masterful. And all of this is ordered to understanding St. Thomas on law, and especially, that beginning of the treatise on law, so questions 90, 91, and 105. That question 105 is about the best form of government. I want my children, my students, to be ready to make that consideration. And then the St. Thomas is ordered to understanding law and the particular application found in the US Constitution. And when my European families say to me, but who cares about the US Constitution? I say, you should care. If you care about the Roman Constitution and the stability found by that particular system, you should care about the United States Constitution, which was a further development of that understanding of checks and balances. And you've got the EU to deal with or not deal with. The arguments articulated by St. Thomas and played out, it is so important, you guys, that those arguments between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists are absolutely key in understanding what we really think governmental authority is. The Anti-Federalists think if you've got a government over you, it controls every part of your life. And the Federalists are absolutely opposed to that. And you should know those arguments. We should all know those arguments. I keep saying to my students, you've got to understand this or you cannot vote intelligently. And for most of us, voting is what we can do, voting and articulating it. But you don't understand it, you can't articulate it. So I think it's really important. It's a universal study. It is not a study for American students. It's a study for people who care about government. And I care about government. And I think we're called to care about government. And then, after the kids they do the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, they read the Constitution and the Declaration. Very important there too. I was just talking to a student this morning. You read that Declaration and what you've got in front of you is a document that is taking seriously the 7 things that have to be true in order for you to legitimately throw off a tyrannical government. And the kids are reading that in their Catholic doctrine class, and then they are seeing it applied in the advanced government class. And that too, I think, could be very pertinent to us at some point here. They also read Quadragesimo Anno so that they can think about all of that in the light of the church's teaching. Oh, that's a difficult course, but it's super interesting. And I think it is really, really, really important in this day for the formation of our children. And throughout the course, throughout the whole 4 years, the kids are being asked to consider matters in the light of the expedient and the inexpedient, the just and the unjust, and the praiseworthy and blameworthy. In other words, the ends of rhetoric. And then they are encouraged always to make a judgment. One of my kids, one of my own children said to me recently, Mom, I think it's really important, I think he's right, to emphasize that this is order to judgment. It's not just like random knowledge, what good is it to have the information if it doesn't lead you to judgment about the good and the bad, the true and the false, the beautiful and the ugly? We need to raise our children so that they can make good judgments. And that's just crucial. And I feel like I'm a preacher, because the older I get, the clearer it is to me what we're being called to and the mess we're in. I spent the last 3 days at what I considered to be a pretty good secular school doing a WASC visit. So accreditation, right? Western Association of Schools and Colleges. I think, those teachers were really concerned about those children. Very small student-teacher ratio, 1:8. Very, very, very dedicated to finding out what the children needed, but zero clue about objective truth and the formation of the human person as a human person. Just zero. Because they don't have our context. They don't have the Catholic faith. They don't see that this forms everything we do. One of the best sermons I ever heard said, you breathe differently because you're a Catholic. It informs everything you do. If it informs how you breathe, it certainly informs how you raise your children and the education you give them. And it's just crucial to understand what law is and what government is, how a virtuous man relates to both is essential, not a luxury. To counter the incredibly pervasive false narrative we're being fed every day through the media, we have to supply a really excellent Catholic academic formation. It's not necessary in every age, and nobody's going to say that you have to be, you have to have a doctorate in philosophy to be saved. That would be crazy, right? That's not true. But right now, our children do need an excellent academic formation, or they're going to grow up like everybody around them, thinking that nothing has a nature. that you can just make things be what you want, which is why you can decide on whether you're a man or a woman. It is crazy, but it's everywhere. I encountered that at the school I went to. Yeah. So we have similar overarching large goals in theology, because I want those kids to be able to articulate what St. Thomas calls the preambles of the faith. We call the motives of credibility. I want them to be able to make an argument from reason, based on reason, right? That leads you to the Catholic Church is the true church. Now, of course, you can't reason to faith. Faith is a gift, but you can prepare the ground. And you can give your children the arguments from reason that make it possible for them to answer the assaults on their faith that they are inevitably going to face. And all of that content in our program is done with an understanding that there are formative stages that have to be taken into account, as well as the content. So, in a nutshell, what's essential in teaching is that the student does what's appropriate at each period of learning. So he memorizes and observes at the grammatical stage, kindergarten through 5th grade. This strengthens his imagination and makes it docile, so that the next stage of learning, the analytical, sometimes called the logical or dialectical, he will have the help of a trained imagination in following and constructing arguments. And it is necessary, so it's a good thing, right? It's necessary that when he's ready, when he's capable of grasping and marshaling arguments, he should practice doing so. And I'm telling you, there's no way you can stop it. It's better to direct it, because my whole experience of 11th and 12th graders is they want to argue. So give them something to argue about, and something where you can be working together instead of in opposition. And then in the last stage, called the rhetorical stage, that's given to articulating those arguments elegantly in the service of the truly noble. And the student at these various stages has the opportunity to consider, as I was saying, much of the same material in a different light, based on his ability, interest, and level of formation. These stages are natural to the student, and the activities are activities he is going to do, whether you tell him to or not. But knowing them helps us use our curricula, whatever it is, in the most efficient way possible to achieve our educational goals. And these methodological goals, right, the sequencing, observing, memorizing in the early years, learning to recognize and construct an argument in the middle school years, and then articulating those arguments elegantly in the high school years, really that's all based on the doctrine of the De Anima. And I am happy to go into that doctrine in more detail another time. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. We do have on our website an article about it, which you are welcome to look at. And I love to talk about it because I think it's super interesting. But the kind of just general overview of that is that there's a how as well as a what taken into consideration in every assignment, how you do it, as well as what you are studying. So, yeah, I think that's interesting. So my contention is that both our particular content goals are unique to our program, and also that we take account of the methodology that's appropriate to the stage of learning is unique to our program. And then in addition, some of the particular practical helps that we offer families are unique. The original structure of the school was based on what I thought would have helped me homeschool, right? Because I'd been homeschooling for 10 years before I wrote Designing Your Own Classical Curriculum. And then once I wrote that, that's how Mother of Divine Grace was born. And when I was thinking about the structure, I thought, what would have made the last 10 years easier for me? And that was the structure we included. I would have liked to talk to somebody with experience who understood what I was trying to accomplish and who had already done it. That would have made my life a lot easier. And that's why we have consultants, because they're women, intelligent, faithful, dedicated women who have actually done this program in their own home with their own children. So they know what it means so that a mom can call up and she can ask, how does this argument work? But she can also say, what do I do about my kid who's throwing himself on the floor, right? Because they do. So you have somebody to talk to who actually knows. I also thought it would be helpful to have someone more experienced than I to look at my children's work. I remember one of my kids thinking, yeah, is this normal? I don't really know. Is this normal? Yeah, I actually took my third graders' work down to a local school and asked to speak to the third grade teacher. I know, like, is this what it looks like? So that's why we have teacher services. But I also thought that with different children at different times, I wanted more or less help, right? So that's why we have various levels of service. You get to decide how much help you want and need. Then we added the synchronous online classes to our repertoire, so to speak, to help families. All of these are just ordered to creating a community of like-minded Catholic families who can work together and support one another in forming their children in the light of Catholic classical education. That's what Mother of Divine Grace is. Now, I'm going to take this opportunity to just say something that fits with that. Like I said, I feel, never thought of myself as a preacher, but I was talking to one of my students this morning, and I have to tell you, it was super gratifying. This is somebody I've worked with one-on-one for 6 or 7 years. I talk to him once a week. And I was saying to him again, as I often say, Benedict, just always have to remember, this life is really short, like really short. And eternity is really long, like forever. I said, Benedict, it overwhelms me sometimes. I think how stupid we are. And I'm not just talking about other people. I'm talking about me. How stupid we are when we make a decision based on this little tiny part of our lives, instead of always thinking about how is this decision going to make a difference with respect to that which lasts forever. And he said to me, Mrs. Berquist, I was thinking about that too. He's heard it enough, but I was thinking about that too when my sister gave me this book called Be a Man. And that's what he says in the first chapter of that book. And I just think it's so true. You've got to think all the time. This is my little, 17, 18-year-old kid. That you just got to think all the time about how is this decision going to affect that eternity. That's what we have to think about. And that's what we have to raise our children to think about. And most of you, I don't know. I don't know if you're homeschooling or if you're thinking about homeschooling. I don't know if you're homeschooling and thinking about Mother of Divine. I don't know where you are, but I do want to say this, as I have this chance. I'm going to say it. I think God's giving you an opportunity. I think he is calling you. I think homeschooling is not properly speaking a vocation, but it's like a vocation. It's something to which we are called because our civilization is falling apart. And I think you have an opportunity. And I think you should take it. I think you should give yourself to this. You can form your children in a way no one else can do. You have the grace of the sacrament. And that, remember, every sacrament gives you both sanctifying grace and sacramental grace. And the sacramental grace of matrimony is ordered to the procreation and education of children. The very fact, Pope St. John Paul II said this, the very fact that you're parents means that you're a teacher. And I'm going to say this, I know, when I started homeschooling, which was, like in 85, somewhere around there, maybe a little earlier. But when I started homeschooling, I had no idea how this was going to work out. Now in the United States, homeschooling's accepted, your kid's a homeschooler, that's not, you might have to jump through a few more hoops, but they can go to any school they want to. Everybody understands that, but that was not true when I started homeschooling. That was not true. We stayed inside during the day because I was afraid that, you know, Child Protective Services would turn up at my door. I had no idea what they were going to do for their further education. I didn't know, but I knew that I was called to form them. See, I could never be a preacher because I cry, but I knew, you know, we talk about trusting God, right? We all talk about that. We're all faithful Catholics here. We all talk about trusting God. But I think you have to live it and not just talk about it. I think you have to trust God. I don't know what your kids are going to do for college. I don't know. And I can't promise you that they're going to get into the school you want them to get into. I can't make that promise. As a matter of fact, my kids did. And my friends' kids did, as a matter of fact. But I can't promise that. What I can tell you is that it's a lot more important that you form your children in the faith than it is that they get into whatever university you happen to be thinking about right now. And I also think that you have to trust God. He loves your children more than you do. He wants what's best for them, and he knows what it is in a way you don't. So, like I said, I never saw myself as a preacher, but I do think you're being given an opportunity. Like I said, I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're homeschooling already. I don't know. But I do think that you need to take seriously the very best Catholic formation you can give to your children. I think you need to take that seriously and not worry about the future. Don't worry about it. I'm not saying be stupid, but don't make your decisions and choices now today based on what might happen in 5 years, 10 years. You know, that's not how we operate. Not about things like this. So there you go. There you go.
Thank you. That was great. Yeah, it's it convinces me every time. I'm sort of thinking, oh, it's hard at times, but it's just like I hear Laura and I'm like, oh, that's it. I know I'm doing it. So thank you so much. Right. It's so encouraging. It's great. We've got a couple of questions in the chat people have put. So
yes.
do you want to read them?
So
do you want to read them, Jenny, or can you read them, Laura? There's two there.
Yeah, Jenny, can you help me out
Well,
here?
the first one is the UK curriculum adjusted to account for the different expected level of, example, mathematics or sciences by the end of high school in the UK versus USA? Some of the content of UK A levels is not taught until first year undergrad in USA.
It all depends on what curriculum you're using, to be honest. And there's a lot of flexibility for what, you know, this isn't school in a box. I mean, we're not school in a box. So you know, we have students who do calculus, even advanced calculus in high school. Usually they take that course at a community college. But there are many levels. Math's just not an issue. I'm just saying, maths are just not an issue. You decide where you want to go and what you want them to do, and you use a curriculum. So, and we've had many. I mean, you know, we've been doing this for 30 years, right? And we've had thousands of graduates. We graduate 400 students every year. We've had many students go into high-level engineering courses. It's just not something to worry about.
Okay, there's one here. Hold on, sorry.
How do you manage the relationship between routine and flexibility around particular children and family life when it comes to the program?
Yeah, so that's why you have a consultant, first of all, because she's somebody who can help with those kinds of questions. Other people I learned this week, call it a multi-tiered system of support. So ladies, we have a multi-tiered system of support. But so we talk about how to make those adjustments and what your goals are. And, you know, I'm a routine person myself. That is, I find that when the children's expectations are set and consistent, they're a lot more cooperative. But I believe in flexibility because you live in a family and, you know, what can you do, right? You have 6 children, or you have to take care of your mother or something. The beauty of homeschooling is you can do that and not lose anything. So, yeah, but that is why I have a consultant. I mean, that's why we have consultants. It's so that you have somebody to talk to about that kind of thing. Mm. And you know, so about the enjoy the learning experience and working through the curriculum, I just want to say this, and you know, we have other ladies here who have done this, but the 2 things I've found most important for little children to love what they're doing is that you love it first. That's the first thing. That it's fun for you, that you enjoy working with your little person, that when you're doing the Bible stories, you're actually sitting beside them and drawing the picture. I guess Richard was in 1st grade and he didn't like to color, and we have those Bible stories where you make the pictures, right? And I sat down beside him and we each drew a picture, and as soon as I set down my crayon, he picked it up and he started doing what I'd done, so that we had this beautiful harmonious lesson where we were talking about the Tower of Babel. It was great. And at the end of it, he said to me, "Mom, that's the most fun I've ever had in school." It was wonderful. It was so much fun. But you have to enjoy it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I do think you have to have a routine for little kids. That's just my experience. You have to have a routine so they have expectations. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming routine. It doesn't have to take up all your day, but you have to have a routine. And then you have a structure within which to do the extra fun things. And that, you know, I mean, for what it's worth, right? That's my experience of how to make sure they're enjoying learning. Yeah, go ahead.
So just someone's asked whether you can transition to Mother Divine Grace for high school, whether that works. Is it difficult to transition to high school?
I'll be perfectly frank, it's more difficult than starting out, but is it possible? You bet. Many, 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 many students have done that. Many. And there are, you know, particular, I mean, again, that's why you have a consultant. There are particular areas that you're going to want to focus on. I remember, for example, so those of you who have little kids, make sure they're doing poetry. You know, make sure you're doing poetry, whatever program you're doing or school. I had a National Merit Scholarship finalist girl who called me up and really complained about the Ballad of the White Horse and the assignment and the questions. She was just really upset about it. And her mom was upset too. And I got off the phone thinking, man, this kid's really smart and she's having a hard time. I don't know, I didn't think it was that bad. My kids did it, but maybe I'm wrong. But the very next phone call in God's providence was from a kid I'd been working with from kindergarten. No, that's not true. But you know, they'd been enrolled since kindergarten, and I'd been working with them throughout high school. This was 11th grade, a junior. And he happened to be doing the same assignment. So I said to him, George, not his name, George, so how do you like the Ballad of the White Horse? Tell me what's going on. And he told me what was going on. Like, he was following just fine. And he talked to him. I said, what's your favorite part? And he says, when Alfred goes into the enemy camp, and did you notice, Mrs. Berquist, that you start with the youngest guy? There are 4 of them. They're each saying what they think. And the youngest guy just loves that, going out and killing people stuff. And each of them, as they're moving up, their view is changing till you finally get to the oldest one, who's like, it's just worthless. There's nothing. This is completely unsatisfying. And thought, wow, good for you, George. I got off the phone. It's like, why would this be? There's this National Merit Scholarship finalist girl who can't figure out what's going on. And there's this kid who is not a National Merit Scholarship finalist, and he's not having any trouble. And I realized he'd been in our program from kindergarten on. She joined us in 9th grade. She'd never read poetry. So it was really hard for her, that kind of complex sentence, and the, you know, the imagery that's present in poetry was hard. So make sure that your kids are reading poetry. And so that kind of thing can make it more difficult. But listen, I didn't get this education. I went to Thomas Aquinas College. I came from a really poor K through 12 education. And I went to Thomas Aquinas College. I was out of my depth, but I learned. You can learn. So.
Somebody's just asked about how things are organized, whether you get things like book lists and things like that. Like how do they, like particularly for people in the UK and people in Ireland, how is it all organized?
Yeah, so again, you have a consultant, right? So Helen and, you know, some ladies have, for that 3rd, 4th, 5th grade history, which should be local history, they've got a syllabus for that, and there are book lists. All the rest of it is, you know, you get a lesson plan, and we have the book list that you need to execute that lesson plan, and we have a bookstore that you order the books from, or you can get things online. You can get from wherever you want. You don't have to get it from us. And your consultant helps you develop that curriculum based on your family and your background and your goals, you know, because it's not a one size fits all. So I did, you know, I do want everybody to do that history sequence. I think it's so important. And the religion, I want them to do that religion. But there's a lot of flexibility within that. And even within, like the ancient history, I was talking about the ancient history, right? Just within the lesson plans as they exist, without any special accommodation, there are changes that can be made. You can read the Iliad. I recommend reading the Iliad. But if you don't read the Iliad, you can read the children's Homer, you know? So what we want to do is teach the truth to children. We want to give them this experience of forming their minds, hearts, souls. And we've had a lot of experience now. And the consultants are absolutely wonderful. Amazing.
So someone's just said that they found the costs difficult to understand, but I mean, any questions? I mean, contact, you know, just have a look at the website and contact. You know, I'm sure Paul would speak to this as well. That, you know, just ask, just ask, and anyone will be very happy to help you with things like that. You know, because we haven't. This isn't really a meeting about the nuts and bolts of how it all works. So we could have spent a lot of time talking about, I don't know, like a day to day or a day in the life of, or, you know, and showing you the website and how it all works. I mean, there's just a lot of back stuff that goes on, but that isn't what we have done meetings like that, and maybe we'll do it again. You know, if there's an interest, we could certainly do that again.
It's a good idea.
So contact the office, or you know, contact some of the British consultants. We'll put our emails down actually. So the British consultants and the Irish consultants will put our email addresses in. So yeah, do contact us, or contact Paul, or any of the people in the office, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I'm the mission and vision person, right? I don't actually know how much things cost, to be honest. Paul knows. But I just want to tell you this. I really, really think this is a call from God. I really think that. I think God is asking you, us as a community, to do for the church, for our families first, but for the church, what the monasteries in the Middle Ages or Dark Ages did. You know, Father Thessia was the first person I heard say that, and I could not agree with him more. And when you know, like that sweet little boy I was talking to this morning, when we have our graduations and I meet these kids, I said, they're amazing. They're amazing. And when I go to school, like I was just at, those unhappy children who don't know. And, you know, I was on my team with a fallen away Catholic. And so we had some interesting conversations. But one of the things he finally said to me was, yeah, I just wasn't taught this stuff. I just didn't know. And I want to make sure that my children and your children know. That's what I care about.
you. Any more questions or anything we haven't answered? Do put it in. Did we miss anything? I think people are asking about classes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are lots of classes.
There are lots of classes. Yeah, and that's another thing. I really do think they're a good thing. One of my European families, actually, it's very funny, the way they enrolled in the classes, the way they enrolled in the school was funny. They enrolled two high school children. No, one grade school child and one high school child. No, they enrolled one grade school child. 3 months later, they enrolled a high school child. They signed up for some of the learning support classes. And then 3 months later, after school had started, they enrolled another high school child. And then at the end of the year, they enrolled another grade school child. So by the end of the year, we had 4 kids, right? But it's an unusual way to do it. So I asked the parents, they were both on the call, just why they done that? And the dad said, well, so we enrolled. First, we were thinking it was just okay for grade school, but our high school kid was going to graduate in a year, and in your system, he'd have to go 2 more years. And we just didn't know about that. But then we started reading stuff, and we decided it's worth 2 years. So we signed him up. And then he was in 11th grade, and they're doing the medieval history class and the religion class, Bible study. And the little girl was doing religion class. And he said, what we did was we all stood around and we listened to those classes all together as a family. And he said, I've never heard anything like it. I've never heard children that age so unapologetically and not belligerently, just matter of course, talk about their faith and their understanding of the faith and the importance of the faith. He said, I listened to that and I thought, I want this for all my kids. And that's why they signed up. And those learning support classes are a wonderful opportunity for children to hear other children who take the faith seriously, who come from families like yours. It's wonderful. Yeah, I know, Emma. God bless her. I'm very proud of her.
There was just a practical question that we missed early on. Any tips on not just ticking the boxes and helping children enjoy their learning experience, working through the curriculum?
Mm-hmm.
Have children in kindergarten and grade 2. She's currently a Mother of Divine Grace family.
Yeah. Well, I what I said, I think it's true. The most important thing is that you enjoy it. And then you have a consultant who can help you with, we need to do this. Maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you could try it this way. There's a lot of flexibility with the little kids, a lot. In high school, it is more rigorous. That's just a fact. But then they're ready and they should be challenged intellectually. So, and I saw Helen say high school is a good place to join. And I do think that's true. I think it can be harder, but I do think it's true because they're ready to be challenged in that way. They're interested. I nearly left the church myself, right? If I hadn't gone to Thomas Aquinas College. I mean, God can do anything, who knows? But I was on my way out. I remember 2 things. I mean, my dad did say you have to go to Mass. So I went to Mass, but I remember being at communion and looking around and thinking, these people don't think that's God. They thought that was God, they'd act differently. When I went to Thomas Aquinas College and I got to the consecration and I looked around, I said, they actually think this is God. I can tell they think this is God. And I had lots of questions in high school. And when I asked my questions, I was told, this is a Catholic school. I was told, fornication is all right as long as you really love each other. The church is going to change its position on contraception because it has to. If you don't feel like going to Mass on Sunday, don't go. What good is it doing you? Nobody talked to me about God is the creator. I'm the creature. I owe him worship. Doesn't matter how I feel about it. That's the right stance of the creature to the creator. Nobody told me that. Nobody talked to me about the nature of marriage. Nobody talked to me about the necessity of providing a stable situation, a stable environment for the children that naturally come from sexual activity. Nobody talked to me about that. And when I went to Thomas Aquinas College, they did. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. That's what I was like, my kids are going to learn from the beginning about this stuff that makes sense. They're not going to find out when they're older. They're going to know it from the beginning. Yeah.